Hello and welcome back to the Right Brain Podcast. Today we're gonna dive into something deep, I think.
Yes.
I was feeling inspired by my beautiful friend Emmy coming on here and talking about her story
And her song Skinny.
and her song Skinny and being so open about that.
And being able to go on American Idol and strip down her makeup, like be just herself and just really open and vulnerable and honest. It's cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. So yeah, I love to talk about everything on this podcast. But yeah, I feel like, well, the reason I started this obviously was to show that like I struggle with a lot of things that people can relate to. But at this point, I'm just like racking on a bunch of the things I struggle with. But
listen, for me, I'm so proud of you for doing this.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to be vulnerable and open. And I know you're doing this because you want to help other people. That's the purpose of this.
Yeah, that is the purpose.
And so, that's hard to do because it would be a lot easier for you to pretend that you have no flaws and that you're perfect. And
I am.
Because you look that way, you look beautiful and everybody would think that, but that's not real. That's not you. And that doesn't really help anybody. And people don't appreciate that anymore, right? That kind of being a celebrity that is, above everybody and perfect and everything isn't really a thing anymore, I don't think,
Yeah. Well, I'm just a girl, but I do struggle with, so basically, yeah. So we're going to talk about eating disorders today. And it's probably, I think like I am a very open person. I know right brain people tend to overshare things sometimes. And I find myself doing that sometimes with just like in conversations and stuff. But it's funny because talking about like my eating disorder is something I never, ever, ever speak about to anyone. And I have some pretty cool, like strong female friends here in town that have been, included, but that like for the first time in my entire life, like I've been around people that are open about them struggling with that. So it's kind of like gotten me to be more open about it. But yeah, I mean, it's been since I was 18 that I've struggled. Maybe honestly before that, because in high school I struggled with things too. But when my like freshman year of college is when everything really started to go crazy.
Would you say, and I think to me, of all the things talking about that make someone uncomfortable, and especially, and I know this happens in young men as well, but especially in young women, do you feel like amongst your friends and yourself, it's the hardest thing to talk about? Like that would be almost like the deepest, darkest secret that somebody has. Would you say that?
I think for me it is, but that's because I think it's like my true like vice. Like I thought about it over the years. Like I think, people struggle with drug addiction or with alcohol addiction or gambling or whatever. And I think that like my like one like real vice that I cannot or haven't been able to overcome yet is that one. So I think that's probably why it's the hardest for me to talk about.
So you feel like other women are a little bit, it's easier for them to talk?
No, I don't think it's easier for them.
Even with Emmy yesterday, or even with Emmy on the show, you could tell that although she was open about it, you could see that there was a point where she didn't want to go to.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think, no, I definitely don't think it's easy for anyone to talk about, but I feel like I've been, for the first time in my entire life, able to kind of have conversations with my friends about it and not feel like super secretive.
Well, I mean, basically, and the reality is that you and I have never talked about it, and that I know that it existed and I've known it and we've been part of trying to get you some treatment. So, but like until last night, we were never really kind of even addressed it ourselves. And that was something that you even mentioned to me, that's one of the reasons why it was going to be really hard to do the show today, because it's me and you.
Yeah.
And that is also where I think there's probably so many young women that also, especially if they're right brain dominant, that have this sense of guilt and shame about it. That also is part of what leads to it, but also may be this fear of their parents knowing or their family knowing. You know what I mean? Like, was that something like, has that?
Yeah, for sure. You like, I feel kind of like it's like something I completely compartmentalize. Like it's something I'll do, and then like I won't speak about it or think about it until it happens again. And then like, but it's like just a very like, I feel like I like just disassociate for like an hour or two, and then I come back and I just go about my life. But obviously it affects my like energy and things like that. But this is also, I also want to kind of like get to or break it down to what it has to do with right brain and left brain, and because you mentioned some of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting.
But I think you were going somewhere, which was when it first started. Because again, we haven't even talked about this.
Yeah.
So I have an idea about it, but if you could talk about what was the first trigger, what was the first time you remember doing it? Or you said it was in high school, but really in college. So what happened around that?
Well, you know, I am the daughter of a supermodel, and it's not her fault for being perfect. But that was just kind of like a lot to compare myself to.
So you felt like when you were in high school, whatever, when you started becoming more aware, you would compare your body to, let's say, your mother's body. Yeah, which is really hard. I mean, and if your mother was 200 pounds, it wouldn't have
and she is so beautiful, and that was constantly being pointed out. And that's, like I said, it's not her fault for being so beautiful.
If anything, your mother was also aware of this. Like your mother would come to me and know, she's like, I can tell that Ellie is kind of, comparing, and your mother's not somebody, again, that's looking for that type of attention from anybody, really. And she is the first one to say, "This, I had my time. This isn't my time."
No, well, no. I mean, she always is going, and also,
do you want to get a tissue or something?
Yes, I have tears all over my face. Yeah. Sorry, I'm dead.
I'm thinking. All right, we just starting, and the waterworks are.
I know,
and it's gonna be. So you definitely need like a whole box.
I know, and I wore under eyeliner. Thank you, you rock. I wore under eyeliner today so that I, in my head, could be like, you have under eyeliner on, you can't cry. So that's.
And I have no idea what that means. But
okay, well, don't worry about it.
I guess it's something against crying, but I don't know what under eyeliner means. But
it doesn't matter. Okay. No, it's like the waterline.
I got you.
Okay. Anyway, that's all to say. Yes, I felt I was comparing myself to my mom a lot, and I obviously, when you're a kid, like you feel awkward in your body no matter what, and you're gonna compare yourself to bodies like that no matter what. But then obviously when it's like your own mom, you feel like and I've never been like fat or anything like that. It's more that I was like really muscular kind of growing up.
Sure,
I played soccer.
Yeah,
so I was like had a very like muscular body, and I was just would be comparing it to my mom, because everyone would always talk about like, oh my God, your mom is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And I'm like, I know that. And once I get rid of this unibrow, I might look a little bit more like her. But it was just like.
No, you actually always looked like her.
No, but I'm saying when I was a kid, I felt like awkward in my body. So I would always compare myself to her. So anyway, that kind of like started me having like weird eating habits like in high school and stuff, but nothing too crazy. But I think.
Like, what would you do?
I would just like starve myself during the day and not eat. And then I'd have like a like random bag of like animal crackers and then like not eat anything. But it was like not good because I was playing like so much soccer. So anyway, that's all to say. When I got to college, I was supposed to play soccer in college and I got hurt. And then when I got to school, I didn't really have an outlet for like how I managed my stress and also how I like worked out so hard all the time. So then I kind of just started like, I wasn't eating for a long time to the point where I like didn't even like get my period anymore because I was like, so that was more like anorexia, I guess, for a while. And then I started being bulimic, and that started from me just like not feeling well when I drank too much. And I was like, oh, I just ate too much like after I drank a lot or whatever I did. And then I didn't feel well, but then that was just like an excuse. And like after a while it just became like
So the first time you ever made yourself throw up was in college.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, so and again, to give context to people, we never I mean, we always knew you were an incredibly talented, creative person, writing songs. You were a good athlete. Obviously, I'm very aware of the whole hemispheric imbalance stuff, and that was part of what I was developing. But as a child, you didn't present as someone that had a clear learning disability at all. You actually did pretty well in school, even though you were struggling, but you kind of covered it up. We didn't understand, that you had a lot of your fears. We didn't know that you had OCD. We didn't really know a lot of this. So for me to be able to intervene on you early, like you did such a good job of hiding it. And it did. And I don't mean that in a, like you did it in a, way where you're being sneaky. It was you were doing it because of the fear of shame or guilt, or really out of not wanting to hurt us because you knew that it would be hard for us to hear this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you you didn't even tell me a lot of this whole, your right brain journey of OCD and your fears and your anxieties and why you wouldn't sleep as a little girl. You didn't even tell me any of this until college, really, when it all kind of came out. And I think once you lost your structure of your organization, of somebody like acting as your left brain, which essentially your mother would do mostly. I would do a little bit, but helping to keep you organized, doing your homework, getting to your appointments.
I don't know what that has to do with.
I'm just saying that when you got to college and you had to you became overwhelmed because I think again, you said you try to organize everything, but then also the idea that you weren't running, you weren't exercising a lot, and all of that came together. So the point is that, we didn't even know you were having a lot of these issues or struggles until really college. So again, there is a neurological component to it. And again, you said that you stopped eating, which, could be looked at as anorexia. And if you're looking at just definition, but neurologically, when we see people that are anorexic, typically it's more of a right brain delay. And what's interesting is that people that there's been studies showing something called haptic perception, meaning like your ability to feel things like vibration in your body, that perception, that people that are anorexic, they have lower haptic perception, especially from the left side of their body, meaning they don't feel. Their right brain is decreased and they're less connected to their body. And a lot of those people, they don't really feel hungry. You know what I mean? Like I get a lot of kids on the autism spectrum that may not eat at all because they're not hungry. They literally don't feel hungry, or they'll only eat certain foods. And if they don't get those foods, they would go for days without eating if they didn't get it, because they're not eating because they're hungry. Because, hunger is perceived in an area of the brain, an area called the insula, and particularly on the right side. So a lot of people with anorexia have more of a right brain deficit presentation, almost like an autism spectrum presentation or an ADHD or a left brain type of OCD. And again, we know that because there's been studies showing that they don't really feel the left side of their body as much as they feel the right. People that have more bulimia or have where body dysmorphic type of perception, it's more of a right brain dominant type, like what you had, where you're overly aware of your feelings, your body, and you may be hyper aware of hunger. And so I think that's what helps it turn to bulimia, because you're trying just to starve yourself, but you feel hunger maybe more than a typical person. So the ability and the amount of willpower it takes to not eat purposely can be almost impossible to maintain. And so the next step is, okay, I eat, but then I get rid of it, right? Do you think that's kind of like a logical progression there?
Yeah, I think so. I'm having a really hard time talking about this, actually.
I know you are. And we knew you were going to.
I think I want to change my mind and I don't want to do it anymore.
Let's just keep on going. We can never show that we could keep this show and never show it to anybody, but let's just go through with it, okay?
Okay.
All right? Like I said, it's just a conversation, me and you, and we'll throw some science in it, but I said if we're going to do it, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Well, what are you feeling with that? Why don't you just describe what you just felt right now that made you feel like you wanted to stop?
I don't know. I feel like I just don't like talking about this. So
I know you don't, but that's why it's good to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we've never talked. Is it because you're talking to me? Is it just in general?
Yeah, I feel like a fool. I don't know why.
Why do you feel like a fool? Because
it's just a weakness.
But is that what you would say to somebody else outside?
No.
Or is that what you say to one of your friends who tells you that they struggle with this?
No.
What would you tell them?
I'd be like, probably really supportive.
Okay. What would you say to them?
That I deal with it too and probably like relate to them or something. But
and if they were feeling like a fool, if they were feeling like there's something wrong with them, what would you tell them?
I'd probably tell them something nice about themselves.
Okay. Would you tell them that that's the way that they shouldn't feel, or that it's not really their fault, or?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do it.
So again, it's hard to really empathize. Like, I can't really empathize that because, I can sympathize, but empathize mean I can't take somebody's perspective of what it's like to feel like having an eating disorder because I've never done it, but you can.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just the whole point of it to talk about it is that, like, especially moving to Nashville and being with my girlfriends are so stunningly beautiful. There's so many of them you would never think that they would think a bad thing about their bodies or anything like that. So it's always crazy when you find that out about people, but it has to do with kind of like the right brain.
Yeah, thing. That kind of shocked me when you were in that facility in New York City where you went for treatment.
Oh yeah, I went to a rehab for it, which I think gives me like some street cred getting to say I went to rehab. No,
no, you went
for an eating disorder.
Yeah, you went to this really great treatment center in New York City, and now, again, to people understand that we were just finding this out, right? So we were like, okay, we want to help you.
Yeah.
And your mom was real concerned because there were other people in our family that have struggled with this.
Yeah.
And so that's where we were like, okay, now I knew neurologically that there was an underlying issue there, but also I realized that you might need some, behavioral help or someone to talk to, and one of the things that shocked me is that every girl in that place was beautiful and seemed so nice, and were all dressed really nice, and they were all like you. It was like, these are this group of girls you would think would never struggle with self-esteem issues.
Yeah.
Or that they would ever have to worry about how they look, and probably would be the envy of most other girls their age, but yet they were all there struggling with the same thing. I thought it was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, well, I guess it just goes to show, like it's kind of just, it plays into all the things that we talk about with like being a right brain person, just being hyper aware of yourself and I guess body dysmorphia and because we've talked about this a bunch, but like when someone has more of a left brain delay, they're like not as attached to their body, and then when you have like or more of a right brain delay, bad. Thank you. More of a right brain delay, they're like not feeling attached to their body, but when you have like very high right brain, you're just like hyper aware of your body. And yeah, so it just plays into all of those things, like overthinking things, anxiety, overthinking what you look like and all that stuff. And also I think it's like a control thing. Like in college, I feel like it was like in times where I just felt so much anxiety and I didn't know what to do. And then I feel like I just like feel my like body so much. And so it's also, I don't know, it's just very weird. Like, and then my like hyper awareness of my body, like, and I know that, like, I feel like when I would wear like more fitted clothes, I actually would feel like more comfortable, or like, because I like was aware of like how, I don't know, I looked or something. I'm not really sure how to explain it. It's like wearing a weighted blanket. I kind of felt like more comfortable in clothes that like that I like could feel more or something. I'm not really sure how that applies to the brain, but yeah. Anyway, all that I still struggle with it, but I've gotten better, because there was a point where like after college, I think it started like my last semester of college, that someone like introduced me to Adderall, and then I realized like if I took Adderall all the time, then I would just always forget to eat. So then it was like I kind of like accidentally ended up having like a drug addiction sort of, but it was because I was just trying to maintain this like very, very thin weight that I was at without eating and with going out like every night.
Right.
Yeah. And then when I like started bartending in New York City, and like then I was going to like acting school and stuff, like I wanted to like maintain that level of energy while also not having to eat. So it like carried on until like into that for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, you can see how that happens, because once you get, like, did you ever feel like you were at a point where you felt like I'm at a comfortable weight and this is what I like and this is the way I look? Or did you always feel like you needed to get thinner? Or was it more like, okay, but this is the way I'm maintaining it now, and you know what I mean? Like, was there ever a point where you felt satisfied with yourself, or did you?
Yes, but at like a really, really unhealthy weight.
Yeah. There was a point where you were really thin, and again, that's where your mom was really concerned, and she would raise it up all the time. But it was so difficult, again, because her attitude would be, she'd be much more straightforward. Like, I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was kind of like, I wasn't sure. Like, I was like, how do you know this is happening? And you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So was there anything that anybody said to you, or was there anything that anybody could have said to you that would have helped you? Like, is there anything we could have done that would have like helped you at a certain point? Or
I honestly don't think so. And that's like the problem. And I'm still like, when I think about women and men that are like in recovery from these type of things, like I find it fascinating, because to me, and that's when I get like kind of really start to have sympathy for people who have like addictions to things and whatever. Cause I'm like, I have absolutely no idea. I'm starting to have an idea, kind of, I think, because I started weightlifting a lot, and like I'm feeling really strong, and I feel like that like feeling like that has made me have more of like a calmer feeling of like my body, and feeling just like proud of it, because I feel like I'm getting really strong, and I like the way I look, and that's helping me, because it helps me like kind of balance out, like, okay, it's okay if I eat a little bit, because I know I'm going to be working out and whatever. But even then, when I'm under like extreme stress, I will fall into periods of time where like I have absolutely no control. And then it affects me like emotionally, and actually makes me even more depressed and more anxious, because like I'm losing like all of the vitamins and completely dehydrated and like whatever. But then it's just like an endless process.
What's the worst emotion from it? Like, is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it depression? Is it self-loathing? Is it any of those things? Like, what is there, like, when you're doing it or whatever? Because I know that it's emotionally painful, right? That's why it's so hard to talk about.
Yeah, that's true.
What are the emotions that it generates that really were the hardest for you?
Like doing it, or how I feel beforehand?
Both. Like what does it trigger beforehand, and then what happens after?
Beforehand, I just feel like I think like maybe if I just like eat like one extra bite of something and I like lose my mind and I need to have control over it, and I'll leave places all the time randomly, which makes me seem kind of mysterious, but I need to leave and like go.
When you say lose your mind, explain that. Be specific. What emotion you're feeling?
I'm just feeling like I don't have any control, and then I'll go down like this like obsessive spiral of like that I'll gain weight, which is
okay. So you start thinking
really
about that
fear, and then
okay.
But it's so weird because like there was like a time like during the pandemic I was definitely not like at a weight that I wanted to be at, but for the most part like since I'm like 16 I've like weighed within the same amount, or actually like less than I was in high school. So it's like, it's a weird thing, but it's like, I'm always like fighting over like literally like 10 pounds that I'm always fighting over. Like it's really not a big deal. I've always like maintained how, whatever, but it's like, it's like an obsessive thing where it's like, well, if I just lost like 5 more pounds, like I would be so much happier. And then I've obviously caused like a lot of like problems for myself, I think like body wise. So like my stomach hurts all the time, and like then I'm feeling like uncomfortable, and if my stomach hurts then it makes me think that I like weigh so much more than I do because I'm in pain, and like I don't know, it's
and it may be misconstrued by your brain as hunger pain.
Yeah. So it's like a whole thing. I cannot believe I'm saying any of this out loud. Probably never going to put this episode out, but whatever.
It doesn't matter, right? It's good. It's healing for you to do it. And I want to understand it because, like I said, we've never really talked about this. This is really kind of the first deep conversation we're having about it.
Yeah.
And obviously I want to understand it because I want to understand you, because I love you and everything about you. And I also, because you've taught me so much about this in other patients that I've helped. I've helped so many people because of you explaining this to me and all of these things. And this is the one thing that we haven't talked about because I knew how painful it was. And I knew how difficult it would be for you to talk about. But I also know how many young women are struggling with this.
Yeah.
That I want to help. And I've seen many, many patients who have come in with this.
Yeah.
And have talked about it to a certain extent. But with all of them, it's so hard for them to talk about.
Yeah.
It's so hard for them to talk, or they don't talk about it at all. This is the one thing that they won't admit to, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. But
this is where you're giving them a permission to do that because you're being really brave right now. Okay.
Thanks.
No, really. Honestly, honey, I'm so proud of you right now. I know how difficult it is. I know how difficult. And for any other young woman out there like you, you know, if you can talk about it, and even with your parents, because I know they love you, because many of these issues are things that really affect the whole family. You know, like you can hide it, but, you know, like you couldn't hide it from your mother. Your mother was all over it. I mean, she knew it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I am still.
Think about it this way. Someday you have a daughter and she's struggling with this. What would you say to her? What would you say for her to get help? Like, imagine this is your daughter having the exact same stuff that you went through, and you want to try to help her in some way for whatever reason. What would you say to her?
I don't know. I think about that a lot, and it kind of scares me. But I think like the best thing I could do is to be like a healed person and not have that be something that's like brought up in my like household or something. Like I would be a lot. My goal is to like heal myself so that I and feel really comfortable in my own body and have that be a good example. And that's as far as I've gotten with like thinking about that. So that's what I'm still working on, but I do think about that all the time because that's how I would like to be. You know, I don't want my issues to be put on somebody else. So yeah. I mean, if I do put this episode out, if anybody has advice and answers, I am open to them. But I think I think the older I get, the more comfortable I feel in my body, you know, like when you're like a teenager and stuff, like the idea of me like leaving the house without my clothes perfect and my hair perfect, everything like that, unless I was going to like soccer practice or something, like I was so hyper aware of all of that. Like I didn't want to even like sleep over at my friend's house because I didn't want to wake up and like not look good the next day or whatever. And now obviously I very much care about how I like present myself. Like I'm an entertainer, but I also just feel like more beautiful in my own skin, just like being myself. And because in college, because my eating disorder got so bad, I wouldn't even wear jeans because like I had like soccer thighs, which I feel like have become really cool to have. But at the time, it just wasn't, it was like more in style to just be like super, super thin. But yeah, so I wouldn't wear jeans because I didn't like the way that my legs looked in jeans. And then it's like kind of makes me sad sometimes because my friends from college will like send pictures of us at like a party or something like that. And like I can remember like in like whenever they send pictures, like I will literally remember the outfit I'm wearing and like the mental breakdown I had before I put that on and like wasting like hours and hours hating what I looked like. And like now I look back and I'm like, think I was so beautiful, but
yep,
I didn't feel that way.
Yeah. Well, that's really amazing that you can share that, because that's kind of really sums it up, right? People look at you, say, look how beautiful she is, whatever. And you can look at yourself now and say, I was so beautiful. But yet you didn't feel that at the time. You felt ugly. You felt like you weighed too much or whatever. And that's body dysmorphic disorder. That's what it is.
I know. And then I remember because I went to that rehab place. And when I got back, and all the girls in that rehab place, like it kind of was backfired because it was like they taught me like all these different tricks of like how to lose weight quicker. And so it's like everyone was like, bitch, if you do this.
It's like going to prison and they teach you to be a better thief. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
I was like, oh, sick. So then like when I got back to school, I was like really like, there was I think I was going through a really bad breakup too. And I did not eat to the point where people were like kind of concerned. But I like thought that was awesome. Like I was so stoked that people were concerned about how skinny I was. And I remember I like took a t-shirt and I cut it and I was like so thin that it was a dress on me. And so I decided to wear it as a dress with like boots. And I took a picture in it. And one of the girls that was in my rehab program, which obviously at the time I didn't tell anybody that I like spent the summer in rehab. One of the girls commented on it and she was like, you look really thin and it's not okay and you need to like go back to whatever. And I remember I like deleted that comment and I was like, that bitch. But I was also like, wow, thanks.
Right. You're also happy about it at the same time.
I was like, oh my God, you're concerned? That's so sweet.
And as a parent, being able to see it from the outside. And obviously I knew that there was a brain relationship to it. But to treat you for that, we'd have to kind of have a conversation about it.
Yeah, and I was not ready to do that.
No.
I haven't been ready until now, so.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for that. But you actually today you kind of brought something up to me that may actually be something that can help people.
Yeah.
So again, the right brain, we've talked about the idea of how it's so connected to our body and our feelings. And a lot of those signals come from our muscles. You know, our muscles are constantly giving us this feedback from gravity, from movement. And so the state of your muscle tone is really the resting state of your muscles and how much feedback you're getting. Yeah. So it's basically like your body and your brain are constantly communicating mostly through your muscles, saying, here I am, here I am, here I am, here I am, and this is how I feel, right? And then interoception, where you're also monitoring what's going on in your gut. And when you start to become bulimic or anorexic or you lose weight, and being an athlete, you were used to a certain level of muscle tone, and you're used to a certain level of feeling your body.
Yeah.
And you're used to being hyper connected to your body. I had another young girl that I worked with. And she was, all about the same thing. She was a soccer player, but she had also had, she had a lot of pain. She had a car accident, but she was so hyper connected to her body and her emotions. And she got to a point where she couldn't really almost leave her house and go to school anymore. And as we started working with her, and as we started building up her left brain, and as she started feeling better, and as we started diminishing her pain, she then started to freak out because she felt like she was dissociating from her body because she didn't feel it as much as she had before.
Oh, weird.
And she was so used to being hyper connected to her feelings, even though they were all negative feelings, that when she didn't feel them, she felt anxious as well, because she felt like, basically, I think her brain was going, where's my body? Mm-hmm. And she literally felt like she was dissociating from her body. But for her, it was just like she was feeling it in a normal way.
Yeah.
And I think when you lose weight, what you're going to lose is you're going to lose fat, but you're going to lose even more muscle. And so you're literally losing your muscle. You're losing your connection, and you're going to lower your muscle tone. And your energy level isn't enough to really exercise substantially. And if you are exercising, most people are only doing cardio because you don't want to lift weights because you don't want to get bigger. And so then you're just breaking your muscles down more, which is actually giving you more of a disconnection from your body, which is why I think you wearing tight clothes made you feel better.
Yeah.
Because the tight clothes made you feel your body better. And that was more your security of where you were connected to your body. And now what you're saying is, as you're exercising and starting to build muscle again, you're actually feeling better connected to your body.
Yeah.
And therefore you're feeling better. You're not feeling as anxious. And you're able to accept that building muscle doesn't mean that you're going to get big or soccer thighs or anything like that. It's actually just giving you a better connection to your body in a healthy way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like really like the only thing that has honestly made a difference in like my eating disorder is now doing weight training.
That's huge.
Because I was like obsessively running for years. I would like wake up and like run and like had to, like if I didn't get a run in, I would like, it would ruin my day. Because then I was like, well, if I can't run, then I can't eat anything today. And so it was just like this like very unhealthy relationship with working out and like having to count every single calorie that I ran. And like in college, they called me elliptical girl because I would just be on the elliptical for like 3 hours because I wanted to see the calorie count go to like 1,000. And then I was like, sick, I could take Adderall and eat watermelon and drink a beer tonight. Like it was so crazy. But anyway, that was like just like this obsessive cycle of like kind of just managing things that way. And now I think with weight training, because I know like the more muscle you build, you kind of burning calories quicker. And I just have like more, I'm giving myself like more freedom. It's not like this jail cell of like how I eat that I've put myself in for years. So that definitely has been helpful.
Yeah, I gotta say, this is pretty cool because one, you talking about it kind of, all of a sudden it clicked in my mind. Why would that be? Like when you were saying why your tight clothes, and I'm like, okay, well, why I know that there's a neurological reason for it, but then you connected it by saying that as you build muscle, and I was like, oh, okay, that's the connection. But that's really important because I don't think I've ever heard anybody in regard to talking about as a treatment for eating disorders, actually lifting weights and not doing aerobic exercise. That's huge. It's really important. That could be like one of the most important things that anybody ever hears in their life if they get it and understand that from a neurological standpoint, it makes sense because being a right brain dominant person, you overfeel things and that creates anxiety. But if you underfeel things, that also creates anxiety.
Yeah.
So that you have to feel things, but in a way that is healthy. And your body being really in good shape and having good, strong muscle tone. And the only way you're going to really get that is through lifting weights. You're not going to get that aerobically. Aerobically, it's actually going to tear down your muscles mostly. It might build up some of your lower muscles and your calf and stuff, but otherwise it tends to tear. Too much aerobic is going to tear your muscles down. And then not eating in combination with that Whereas lifting weights and building muscle tone, and then eating in a more healthy way to actually help build and maintain that muscle, and realizing that the best way to burn calories is to build muscle that will burn the calories constantly. It will burn it more than you can consume it.
Yeah.
That's huge. This is a really big deal. This needs to be explored more. I may need to do some research on this.
You know what I was thinking about, and this is kind of random, and maybe I'm going to explain this wrong, so you could just say, no, that makes no sense. But someone told me, and this is kind of sad, but when cows are, was it you that told me this? When cows are about to go get slaughtered, they have an intuition and kind of like a feeling and knowing that that's what's about to go happen. So then this guy made a machine. This woman made a machine.
Temple Grandin.
Okay. And it hugs the cows and squeezes them.
Machine.
And that calms them down.
Yes.
And then they which is sad that they shouldn't be getting slaughtered, but it calms them down before they go get killed. So the reason I'm bringing that up is I think about that all the time, because I think about weighted, if I go to get a facial, they'll put a weighted thing on me. The most relaxed I felt in a long time was when I went to the dentist and they put this weighted thing on me, and I was like, this is amazing. But I don't know what that has to do with your brain, because I thought you said that was more of a left brain thing, but I don't know.
It is. So for instance, Temple Grandin is an autistic woman. She was very famous. She's a double PhD. She's a brilliant woman. I've actually met her and done interviews with her. Oh. And she's so cool.
Look at that.
And she has written a number of books and was really one of the first people that came out and really described what it was like to be autistic. And what she described was that she didn't feel her body when she was younger, and that she felt calm when she was being squeezed in some way. Mm-hmm. And then she had a sense where she felt what animals could feel. And she lived on a farm where her family had a slaughterhouse. And she would watch these cows being brought in to the slaughterhouse, and she could see their stress. She felt it, from them. Wow. And she knew that they were feeling the same thing she felt. And she knew that when she felt squeezed, or that made her feel calm. So she devised a machine to squeeze them as they were going in there, just enough to calm them down. And she was able to know that worked with her and it would work with them.
Oh, really?
And that lowered their stress level and lowered because it also, the more stress hormones they're producing, the meat isn't as good. So that's where a lot of people who have right brain deficits have a trouble where they don't feel their body.
Yeah.
And that creates anxiety. Right? Now, right brain people feel it too much. But what's interesting is that if, let's say, again, you lose weight and you lose a lot of muscle mass and you don't feel your body as much as you would, that creates anxiety. And so now something like a blanket or, a weighted blanket or squeeze would actually make you feel your body more, and then it brings you up to your baseline level. So it's like a baseline level, let's say, that you should feel your body. It shouldn't be too much. It shouldn't be too little.
Yeah.
And that baseline for right brain dominant people is probably a lot higher than most people. And the way that you feel your body more than almost anything is through your muscles. And if you lose muscle mass because of dieting and not eating and not exercising or doing over aerobic exercising, you lose that muscle mass and that muscle tone. And now it dips below that baseline level of where you feel comfortable. And now wearing tight clothes or wearing a heavy blanket or wearing heavy clothes or lifting weights to get your muscle strength back up to where you feel your body gets you back to that baseline.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I think I'm also it's really crazy, but like mom and I just went to Paris recently, and in my normal brain, I know that we're walking so much. We're eating, and maybe I was a little freer with how I ate, but we're walking so much, everything's fine. But if because I will obsessively weigh myself every day, because I need to which is not good, and I need to get to a point where I don't do that. But it's sometimes I feel like I can't feel my body unless I have something telling me like what it looks like. So like when we went away, I can convince myself every year we go to Sunny Hill, because now I bring a scale there. I will convince myself within 2 days that I've gained 10 pounds. And then the rest of the time I'll look at myself in the mirror and I'll walk around and I'll be like, yeah, that's what happened. Even if maybe I lost 5 pounds.
But even if the scale doesn't tell you that?
No. Like I need the scale to like, I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, okay, I'm still the same weight. Everything's fine. But it's like, I can feel my body, and then maybe I feel it too much to the point where like, since I don't have the scale or something, like I'll feel like my arm or my leg and I'm like, that feels bigger, or that feel like it sounds really crazy, but like, it's like I need, I don't know what that.
Well, that's body dysmorphic disorder, meaning that you don't really feel your body as accurately as it is, right? It's kind of like metacognition. It's the ability to actually judge yourself, or judge your body, or judge your shape, or have a connection how other people judge you. And that's, again, what the right brain is doing kind of all the time. So it's where you lose touch with being able to accurately judge your body. And you're judging it as being bigger than it is, or being in a more negative state than what you would ideally want it to be. Yeah. Unless you have objective proof of that, which is the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. All of this is pretty fascinating stuff. And actually it's given me insights. And I think it's giving actually some practical tools that really make sense, and actually from a neurological perspective.
Interesting.
Yeah, it really is interesting. I always say that when I do a lecture, and when I'm lecturing to people, I'm in the midst of a lecture and somebody asks me a question, or I usually get a realization that I hadn't put things together like that before. And this just happened during this. Okay. I just put this together based on a lot of your input that I think actually can be turned into some practical help for people.
Okay, good. I hope that me telling the world I'm crazy every episode with a different problem is somehow helping. Otherwise, I'm just really letting out all my secrets.
Listen, honey, I think to me, you're probably the most fascinating human in the world, I think, because all these different you're a complicated person, and you're very complicated, and that's interesting, right? Uncomplicated, being perfect is not interesting. Being perfect is actually boring as hell. And your generation knows that more than anybody, and more than, my generation or generation before us, where you had all these Hollywood starlets and stars that were made to be actually perfect, with perfect lives, and they never did anything wrong, and they were never seen on camera without being actually perfect. It wasn't until like, some of the 70s rock stars like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and people like that came out, where that was like, no, you don't have to be that way. And in fact, your generation is more like, no, we're going to be real. We're going to be real. We're going to be raw, and we're not going to be perfect. And that actually is much more interesting of a person.
Well, good.
It's a much more interesting story, for sure.
Yeah, that is. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it all. I'm definitely still a work in progress, but I can say I have made progress. And I think that hopefully this will help other girls understand themselves, or just be more curious about understanding themselves, at least.
I'm very proud of you for doing this. I think it was really hard for you to do it. I think it's great. And I think people are going to get a lot of benefit. And I really got a lot out of it. I have a whole nother line of thinking now.
Okay, great. Well, I am glad this is over. Until next time.
I love you, honey.